Hello, everybody. My name's Simon Timpley from the International Food Safety and Quality Network. Welcome to edition 94 of the Food Safety Fridays webinar program. It's great to be back after a couple of weeks away. I'd like, firstly, as I always do each week, to thank our sponsors who bring this program to you and get you a bit of free education and a certificate of attendance regularly, and that's AIB International, DMV GL Assurance, Metal of Toledo, Trace Analytics, and Safe Food 360. We're going to be talking about product development, how product developers affect food safety shortly with our guest presenter. But first, I'd just like to tell you about next week's webinar. Actually, what I'll do is I'll load it in the sidebar for now, and then in a second, I will talk to you about it. But first, I'll introduce you to Radojka Beritsky, from Technical Training Manager from SCS Global Services. Are you there, Radojka? Yes. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's quite early for you. Is
yes.
It about 7 a.m., yeah?
Yes. And
it's 3 p.m. for me in the UK. And whereabouts are you in the US, Radojka?
I am in the West Coast in California. I live in the Central Valley of California, which is the heart of agriculture for the state.
Very nice. And the weather at the moment, is it nice and sunny?
Yeah, it's promising. It's going to get very hot. We're getting into our hot season. So it gets about 110 degrees here in the valley during the summer. So right now we're in the 80s.
Wow. It's about 60. It's about 60 degrees here, but it's not raining for a change. So if you'd like to get your presentation ready, Radojka.
Okay. Well, welcome again and good morning. So today we're going to be talking about the impact of food safety on product development. I am currently a technical training manager for SCS Global Services, so I would like to introduce you to the company I work for our company. We are a global leader on third-party environmental sustainability and food quality certification and auditing and testing since 1984. Our headquarters are located in Maryville, California, which is the Bay Area, the north side of the state. But we have a worldwide network of staff trainings and auditors and affiliates. Our mission is to recognize the product safety, quality, and environmental and social responsibility achievements of all companies. We, again, offer a wide array of training, testing, and certification services. We certified against GFSI schemes, BRC SQF, Global GAP, and Prima GFS. We also work with a non-GMO project, and we also do testing for sensory flavor management and pesticide testing and chemical testing in food. We actually can answer your questions along the way when you partner with us. We not only do the certification, but we also audit for preparation to the certification process. We can help you with food safety plan and SOPs, pre-assessment consulting, and of course with the certification process. So today we'll be talking about the stage of research and development, food safety hazards, and the key stages of R&D that affect food safety. So there are several stages within the R&D process, and some of them could be quite extensive. Actually, the process, it's very laborious when you actually are trying to launch a new product or you're trying to introduce new technology within the industry. So the first stage is the idea generation, and that stage is when, all the ideas get within the R&D group, and they can get it from different sources. They can do market research, where they're going to be looking at different consumer trends and likes, and they're going to see if there is a market and gaps in products. And so they're going to just look at that particular line of products to start penetrating the market. They can actually get ideas from recipes from cookbooks, social media that provides insights for food trends, and company employees' suggestions and brainstorming sessions. Then once they get an idea or an array of ideas, then they start screening the idea. And in this process, they need to understand if the ideas are going to have any constraints along the way. Some constraint could be ingredients. You know, you can have a very great idea, but then if the ingredient is not a easy, in a place where it's easy to be resourced, then, and it's going to incur into much cost for you to get that ingredient, then the idea will have a eminent constraint and it may not be able to be developed up to the end. Packaging, some foods work well with certain packages than others. Plus, when you are looking at a product itself, you're not only going to be looking at a flavor or a particular product, but you're going to be looking also at does the people like the packaging? You know, some people buy products because the packagings are very attractive. They're very commercial. They're very hand friendly. So technology and equipment. Some products will require very specialized equipment to be produced. Employee skills. Do you need to bring new people that has certain skills to handle the process, or can you do with existing labor that you have? What are the competitors doing? You know, competitors can be a constriction or a constraint because, you know, if they already set up and they're already penetrating the market and you're trying to get into that process, you could not be successful sometimes, depending on how aggressive they are with their marketing and reaching the consumer portion. Distribution, if you are, for example, in a facility that distributes shelf-stable products, and now you want to introduce refrigeration, now you not only have to look into the structure of your warehouse, because now you're going to have to actually provide cooling for the products, but then now you're going to have to change your distribution system as well. And then is there any regulatory constraints? Is there any regulation in specific that you have to meet? Is there any emerging threat that, you know, the product may actually introduce into your process? So all of those things can actually affect any idea that has been outsourced or created by R&D. So then the next step is to actually do a market research. Is this idea really going to work? Okay, once we said, okay, yeah, this is the idea I want, and you know, great, we can do it. It's going to be cost effective. It's going to work well for us. We think that we can, you know, go into the market with this. Now you're going to have to assess the likelihood of the consumer acceptance of the proposed product. So only products that are screened make it to the second stage of the process. So this involves asking consumers for their opinion about the product and market surveys. The ultimate goal is to establish the target consumers, so the age, the gender, the family size, the demographics. When you are going to launch a product, you got to be sure that it's accepted, because it could be the greatest idea coming in the greatest package, you know, where it really wows as soon as you see it. But if the consumer it's not into that kind of product, and if you don't have a big demographic, then you're going to have a lot of issues for cost. It's not going to be cost effective to produce small batches, for example, just for a particular market. Now, the different things that you do during that market research, you identify your trends, you prepare marketing plans, then you do a SWOT analysis report. Then you go to locations and start analyzing the likes and dislikes of consumers. A lot of these can be done through surveys as well. And then you start doing a competitive analysis and see how people are buying other competitor products. Then you target your market analysis. Then you do those domestic and international competitors analysis, price analysis. Okay. Remember that when you do a product, it's site specific based on your ability to produce and your constraints. So you have to understand your costs for the product to make it, and then how much margin are you going to sell it to, and compare that to other products of the same kind from other companies. And then you also generate a report from these to start analyzing the financial and the feasibility of the project as well. So you do consumer interviews, has to be statistically significant. And there are data management systems that are used to collect and analyze data. I am a consumer, just like everybody else here, and I get, from time to time, I get on my email consumer surveys from different products. So, and then once this is done, the market research can determine the success or failures of the proposed product. So those surveys are not uncommon, and usually it's because the companies either evaluated an existing product and they want to see the performance in the market, or they're actually trying to get a new product into the market, and then they're trying to see what will be the like of people in the market. The next one is to create product specifications. So once you have an idea that your product or what kind of product you want to develop, and you have an idea on how it will be accepted in the market, now you're going to create the specifications for the product. So they refer to the functional characteristics of the product. So they can include organoleptic properties, what will be the product consistency, the acidity, food safety considerations. Is this an allergen? Is this going to be sold as for further processing? It is a treated product. Is it a ready-to-eat product? And any technical data that is associated with the actual product. Recipe, storage temperature, packaging, configuration of your pallets when you do your pallets to transport the product, transportation temperatures, etc. Then you're going to be doing a feasibility study. During the feasibility study, you are going to determine if the new product will be profitable and if its production is technically possible. So once you establish the profitability and the technically feasibility of the product production, you are actually going to go into the actual production process. So these steps involves evaluating and executing all the necessary changes for manufacturing the product. It includes all the process steps necessary to meet the specifications and of the final product. So this process could be as simple as a change of ingredient, or can become complicated and involve change of processes. For example, if you are creating a new line or introducing a new equipment, or it could actually have an impact on the way that your plant is laid out. The production process development stage will go a lot smoother if there is adequate resources and that are allocated to ensure the quality of food safety aspects of the product, and these are met. So then the next portion is to develop a prototype, and this it's important, and this requires running the product in the manufacturing environment. Many businesses refer to this stage as a plant trial, and this is a very important state of the process, because you have to ensure that the product runs under the conditions set at the plant. The behavior of ingredients in plant processes could differ from those processes used during the benchtop development stage. Small batches are produced during the benchtop or kitchen process. Usually R&D will have a setup where they will emulate the plant conditions. Some companies may have what they call a pilot plant, where they have like small equipment that is similar to the one that is at a big scale at the plant. Some companies will have just literally a kitchen where they manually produce the product, and then usually those are the first products that are being sent to company executives for acceptance before we actually continue into the process. So transferring those small quantities to bigger batch size can prove to be a difficult task at times. So producing larger quantities will enable widespread of testing of ingredients, formulation, process conditions, product specifications, packaging, and storage conditions. So it will give you a better idea on how the product would actually perform during regular production conditions. And so the next stage, once you create that prototype, you are going to test the prototype. And for that, the product prototype becomes available to focus consumer and markets. The product, it's in a form that can be evaluated by consumers and is subject to further laboratory testing and modification. So at this stage, packaging and labels may be redefined to make them more appealing to the consumer. Nutrition panels are formed. Testing of the packaging at different conditions, include storage requirements, is also performed. And sensory testing is completed by small focus groups. Small-scale product launches are often used to check market acceptance, and small changes are made on completion. Now, this is a big step during the R&D process, and it could be very costly. So when you're doing that market analysis and you're doing all the financials, this is something that needs to be considered and added to that R&D product budget in order to ensure that it is performed. So let's talk a little bit about food safety hazards, and I'm pretty sure that we, as food safety professionals, some of us are very familiar with this, but I just wanted to be sure that we go over this a little bit. So as you know, there are three types of hazards: biological, chemical, and physical. Biologicals refer to microorganisms that could be present in food and actually could harm the consumer. So we got bacteria such as Salmonella, pathogenic E. coli, Listeria monocytogenes. Viruses like norovirus, hepatitis A are common foodborne illness causes. And parasites. You can have parasites like Trichinella that actually grows on or can be hosted by pork. And if you eat uncooked pork meat, then you can have that parasite being ingested by the consumer and causing illness as well in the long term. Now, in terms of chemical, you can have several chemicals They refer to substances that are either man-made or present naturally in the food, and they could be pesticides used during the agricultural process, natural toxins, such as aflatoxins produced by mold, allergens, which are a big concern when it comes to recalls, heavy metals, cleaning chemicals, and radiological nowadays must be considered as well as a possible threat for food safety. And the next one is physical, which refers to any foreign object that actually is present in food and as well can cause harm to the consumer or a non-pleasant experience when they consume our products. So we have glass, brittle plastic, wood, metal. You can have sometimes insects that get into the food, hair, that can get into the food as well. Some of these some of these foreign objects can actually cause real harm to the consumer, like lacerations in their mouth. If you are biting into glass, they can be a choking hazard, but they also can be causing a displeasant or not so pleasant experience where they consume the product if they find, for example, an insect in it. So let's take a look at my model company and how the decision to stay in the market changed the way I had to process my product. So I'm going to give you a run through a fake made-up company just to illustrate a little bit in a practical sense how these R&D stages actually affect a company as a whole. So let's take a look at my model company and how the decision to stay in the market changed the way I had to process my products. I am a juice company that was established in 1975. And at the beginning, I manufactured single-strength juice out of my kitchen and sold it to my neighbors for a good price. The word went around, and I had to move my operation to a manufacturing facility due to our exponential growth in 1977. Juice was still sold fresh without any treatment. The shelf life was not long, but my customers liked the fresh taste of my juice. However, due to an outbreak later on in time, I had to start applying treatment to my juices. This actually proved beneficial to our company because now I have more shelf life in my products. Not only I was keeping the consumer safe, but I also had a shelf life increase. However, my consumers noticed that juice did not taste as fresh. They really like fresh juice. So nothing I could do at the time, as the only technology available was just to heat the product pasteurization temperatures at a minimum. So the years came by and HPP came along. And because I am a person that being an entrepreneur at heart, like technology as well, and likes to be ahead of the market, I started producing HPP products a few years ago. Then my customers loved them because they could not also get a good shelf life out of it, but they also gave them back that raw feeling and taste of the product. Okay, they felt that the juice was minimally processed. So business was booming until 2014. And my traditional customers are children, working parents, scholars, elderly, and athletes. And all age groups like to keep a healthy lifestyle and exercise regularly. One group more than others, but all were very active. They only eat healthy foods, including my delicious juices, and athletes included a wide range of age. from high schoolers to people that were engaged in sports such as football, track, etc. So my target group, like as you can see, is general public, but a lot of them have a active lifestyle. But in 2004, the sales of my juices started declining. So I asked my marketing and R&D department to start a research on the demographics that showed a decline in sales. The data pointed out to parent population, the scholars and athlete groups, more remarkably than the others. In addition, they performed a market research and they found out that the young parenting groups were not engaging in regular exercise routines, but they have increased their routines that demanded muscle training and building. So I asked my R&D department to design the next 3 drinks in 3 different flavors that will also meet the new needs that my customer had. So now I am getting into not just the people that like to have a life healthy style, but they're actually pushing themselves to not only be healthy, but now they want to get toned and healthier. So further market research indicated that these consumers were geared towards non-dairy diets, and because that was the trend at the time, and that they were substituting milk-based products with almond and coconut-based. The challenge was ahead of us. So going back to our R&D stages, let's see what happened next and which stages in R&D had the most impact within the food safety management system. So let's just look at idea generation. And now notice that I don't have all the stages in here because even though you go through all the stages, there are just few that actually will have direct impact into the food safety aspects of the process. So again, I asked my R&D team to get engaged in creating the most delicious beverages that met the current market needs. And again, I wanted it 3 flavors because I wanted to go big. Okay, I just didn't want one flavor at all. Based on the market research, they came out with the concept of an almond beverage line. And the 3 flavors were vanilla, chocolate, and blueberry. So they generated bench tops and sent it to several key stakeholders within the company. And then they were delicious. I loved the drinks, and everybody in the company loved them. Since we had the buy-in from the stakeholders, it was time to go to the next stage. They set up a small market research and trial with the bench tops, and it was a success. I couldn't be happier. So let's see how challenge changed some considerations around my current food safety programs. So now I had to consider the biological, physical, and possible chemical hazards that these new products will bring into my facility. So my R&D team met with the food safety team at my manufacturing facility, and they performed a hazard analysis of ingredients to determine additional process steps if they were needed. So they found that pathogenic E. coli and Salmonella were or could be a part of the threat being introduced. However, these were the same biological hazards existing for my current product line. So we really didn't have issues reintroducing these biological or introducing new biological threats. However, when the team went through the product description, they noticed that the pH of the product was from 6.5 to 6.8. So this is very high pH, which is a good environment for pathogens actually to grow. So this makes the final product a higher risk in comparison to our existing line. Therefore, processing changes may be needed based on validation studies that were performed. So the next consideration was to look at the chemicals. So in the same meeting, my teams started analyzing the ingredients and determined additional process steps were needed. So in chemicals hazards, they found that, well, if we were going to do almond-based beverages, aflatoxins and allergens needed to be considered. Almonds are known to have aflatoxins, and they're part of the Big 8 allergen list for the U.S. So now we had a new hazard being introduced into our facility that we haven't dealt with before. And then we went on and they analyzed the physical hazards, and they found out that none were associated with the ingredients, and same with the process, except that we were adding now, due to the pH and high risk, we didn't want to just do these on HPP, but we now wanted to revert to conventional pasteurization process. So we were also adding pre-batching process, because we're not only just getting the juice and passing it through HPP process, but we were also getting other kind of products that were or ingredients that were non-liquid. So we were adding pre-batching and blending steps along the way. And the major concern was regarding the use of utensils for pre-batching and blending, as they could break and fall into product if not careful. Okay. So then we moved on into the stage of product specifications. So we did send these products to be analyzed by a third-party lab, and actually generate a thermal death study that we would use as a base for establishing our critical limits later on in time. So they arrived, and the R&D team meets again with the food safety team at the manufacturing facility and start brainstorming about products and process specifications. So let's see what they come up with. So the formulation had different ingredients, as I mentioned, and some of those were new to the facility. Some of them were in powder, and some of them were actually as a paste. All ingredients came from approved, reputable suppliers and processed prior to arriving to the facility. So we looked into that sourcing. The almond ingredient had to be tested for pathogens of concerns and aflatoxins prior to coming into the facility, and all other ingredients also were actually coming with a certificate of analysis, and we will use these for our current we had a blueberry superior supplier, so we didn't need to establish any extra protocols for them. Then we looked into the receiving protocols, and we actually had to establish now an allergen management program because almond was or is an allergen. And so we also changed the way we stored. So we now have a segregation policy around storage of the ingredients. And we ensure in that way that there is no cross-contact risk with other ingredients that we keep in cold storage. My team also provide me with the cost launch, and it was at $1.5 million, as we needed to buy and install new equipment, perform validation studies, reinstate the old pasteurizer that I had. Thank God I kept that. Prototype marketing, etc. So that seemed a lot of money, but the good thing is that the ROI within the first year was going to pay the cost of it for itself, and the cost per case was not that high. So once we consider financials, again, we met again, and we started looking at process. So on the pre-batching portion of it, We didn't have risk of cross contact with the almond process or almond ingredient. And we established, again, an allergen management program around the process as well. So we established a color coding process and in the utensils and a pre-op checklist to ensure the integrity of these. And we also ensure that we had sanitation protocols around the pre-batching and blending. Blending also had a tool program that accounts for the tools at the beginning and at the end of the shift, just to avoid that potential foreign objects falling into the blender. And we also had a process of filtration to ensure that if anywhere to fall, we wouldn't have anything going forward at that point. Again, the product pH was 6.5 to 6.9, and due to the high pH or low acidity of the product, they are at a greater risk for pathogen survival. So we decided to go with pasteurization. So we had a unit, and we decided, based on the thermal death studies, that we were going to do a UHT to actually handle this product. And then we also looked at the lines going from into filling. So we had to establish our own order for allergens. And then we were packaging on plastic bottles, so we didn't have any issues with actually foreign objects, okay? The other thing that we included in our allergen management program was label, okay? So we decided to include a label check because we didn't want any of our products to go with a missing label, especially since we have a similar product in-house that didn't include allergens. And the product shelf stable, so we will store and distribute, however, at refrigerated temperatures because that was our existing distribution process. So now that we have we developed our prototype, and we're ready for our first production trial. So the equipment has been tested and the process validated. The food safety plan has been reviewed by the team. We have approved labels. Ingredients have been sourced. Key documents that outline new tasks, such as receiving storage ingredients, the run order, the label aid, cleaning protocols, allergen verification protocols, and cold storage have been developed, and key stakeholders has been trained. We run our first few batches, and we actually place a product on hold until our microbiological tests come back. And guess what? We were successful, and the results are good, and so we're now ready to go into the big time of production. So now we have shipped the prototypes to kit market for trials. So we set up a small testing kiosk or as consumers, to understand the product or try the product. We also follow the consumer complaints closely for this particular product in case we needed to do some readjustments in terms of flavor and small changes in the formulation. So people really like the flavor. They feel that the product is a good product that fit their active style. So we are successful. We have launched a new product line with new flavors. And the best part is that food safety was maintained throughout the process. So as you can see, this process really does have a lot of influence on the actual food safety of existing line of products and the process itself. So careful consideration must be given when you have these great ideas because you want to be a pioneer or because you want to penetrate a market that you haven't worked with before. And also, I didn't touch much on the basis of equipment. As I mentioned in my example, I already had an equipment that, I just had to come out, take it out of storage where I had it and bring it back. Obviously, I had to do some testing trial on that. But if you have a new technology that you want to include on your process, you must follow also the same food safety considerations. Is this new technology bringing any possible threats for biological? Are we looking at foreign objects? Sometimes we want to buy technology, but we don't know how to, or we don't know how to shop or approach, equipment suppliers. Be sure that you create a checklist of those questions that needs to be answered. And most importantly, that you include your food safety team throughout the process, because they should be the technical experts for your facilities that allows you to be successful to launch either a new product line or a new technology for your business. So this is it for me. And I think we'll wait for Simon.
I'm here.
Oh, hi.
So if you can switch your webcam back on and stop sharing. Brilliant. Thanks for that, Radhika. It was great that, sometimes the theory, you can get bogged down in it, but when you give a sort of practical example of the walkthrough of the process, it really helps that. And so thank you. Right, so we will take some questions. I did mark one earlier. It was from SG. And they said, does a small-scale manufacturing follow the R&D stages, in a small company?
So yes, they actually, it's a little bit more difficult for small companies to follow. Sometimes it's just about resources. But in my experience, and I can only talk for my experience, I have worked, like I said, big companies, and I also have worked for private labels. And when I worked for those private labels, my goal was to always establish a process to where there was a new idea coming through. We had all the check and stops, and be organized and very communicative, especially with the people at the plant. And yeah, they do tend to get organized. And a lot of some of the that I work for, they had enough resources to do their own marketing research and stuff like that. So sometimes we just think about big companies doing all this work, but in nowadays market, if you really want to be competitive and you don't want to get into a regulatory issue later on, you really want to get this process tied down.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I guess a team approach is the key.
Yes.
Yeah, and formulating that team very well right at the very beginning of the process.
Yeah.
Kira is asking. I'll just put it out there. Kira's asking, has anybody got a checklist or template they can share for that process? Do you know any that are available anywhere or any guidelines?
No, but my recommendation is that you go through, this presentation will give you a great overview of the R&D stages. And then a lot of us are GFSI certified. So just look at your requirements for your GFSI scheme. Some of them are very prescriptive of what they want. Okay. In my lifetime, when I did prepare these, again, I put myself on each stage. And as a food safety, professional, I just had to put myself and ask the questions. Okay, this stage, how does that affect really, the facility? Okay, and again, they gotta be a communication process, very tight. When I did this, we had what we call design and development meetings, and there were weekly meetings. And sometimes in the meeting, there was no projects to talk about, and you cancel the meeting. But you need to establish a process that is consistent so people start getting used to how this process works. And so when you do have a project, then you go through your checklist, once R&D comes into the idea. But very important that you include the food safety plan or the hazard plan steps, where you do all the hazard analysis and considerations for all your possible threats, as well, to look into the equipment. And your hazard team should be your subject matter experts in process and food safety. So that's why you want to have these meetings with the entire team.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Amy, next question. What would you suggest is done first? Investigate machines, applications, or ingredients?
Well, I don't think that there is a particular order on how you are going to do that. It's just a process as a whole. So again, once the idea gets to your facility, your team of experts need to meet and said, okay, well, now we need new technology. We have to look and investigate, equipment. We cannot do it right now with the people that we have. This requires a whole new line. So now we need to look at operations. And then ingredients will establish a lot of your HACCP-related or food safety-related processes. So it's very important that you look at those. And then with food safety, quality will come along, because you're going to have to do, based on the specifications that R&D is going to give you about the product, and you're going to establish a testing protocol, whether it's because you're introducing a new CCP, and now you have to monitor it, or a preventive control, and now you have to monitor it, or because simply you want to keep the quality of the product, right? So it's a good product not only for the consumer, but you keep your consumers happy. You're going to have to establish those testing protocols as well. So it's a whole process. It's a very holistic process. And sometimes, to be honest with you, when I was involved in the manufacturing facility, I felt like I was running around like crazy when the projects came to me, because there's so much to think about. Just be sure that you have a strong lead for the projects at the manufacturing site that would lead the team, but as well is flexible to have, all the input from the team when it comes to process and food safety.
Yeah. Okay. Just a couple of questions for people who might not see the chat in future, just on the YouTube video. R&D. What's R&D? R&D. Research and development. Ivan asked in the sidebar. And HPP. R&D is research and development, and HPP is high pressurization pasteurization. And actually, that's very commonly now used in the United States. It has been quite a while around the United States. But now, in the past few years, has been very taken off. So it's high pressure pasteurization. Right. Okay. Juan, is it good practice to keep all the information and records about R&D stages and food safety changes when the companies have a product in the process?
It is a very good practice and a very recommended practice, because if you looked into your GFSI schemes, you have to have records for everything, and schemes, regulations require you to keep records of all processes. And living in the United States now with your new regulations of Food Safety Modernization Act and the new reach that the FDA has, if they look at your safety plan, food safety plan, and they're looking to a new product perhaps that you're launching, they're going to ask you, okay, so how did you get here? And, is this included in your hazard analysis? And they'll walk the facility, and if they see that you're producing a product that is not documented, you can really get in trouble.
Okay. Ivan, it's not a question, he just made a comment. Ingredients will define equipment. I would investigate ingredients first.
They could. In some cases, define equipment. Like in my example, I was including now some product or some ingredients that were dry. So now I had to buy 4 items that actually could incorporate those dry ingredients into my liquid because I'm making a beverage. So now I had to shop for blenders and pre-batching equipment and things like that. So yeah, I think everything goes hand on hand.
Yeah, okay. I think you've already answered this one from Natasha. Is there a standard process for R&D? What are the procedures? You've just said that in GFSI standards, there are already prerequisite requirements for product development.
Yeah, so some of them will require you to have a process for product development. The standard process, as I outline it, is the different stages that we went through for R&D. There is wide literature out there about R&D and research and development, so I would just recommend to just go and do a little bit of research. But the general stages were outlined in the presentation.
Okay, and Sanjay, does this question make sense to you? Is it suitable to improvise the flavor profile of a product with excellent market cap?
Is it suitable to improvise the flavor profile of a product with excellent market cap? Yeah. I mean,
what does it mean?
What does it mean? I mean, nowadays on R&D, you can try pretty much everything. Yeah. So, and I mean, you have to remember that sometimes, I live in the United States, but I tell you that I work with a company that outsource ingredients to create new flavors from all over the world. And sometimes you are, introducing new flavors that target specific market where you're outsourcing your ingredients from, or that are in trend and generating, that market for you. So yeah, you can improvise a flavor profile, and have, an excellent acceptance. And it can go the other way around too. So.
Okay. Right. Diane, what would a manufacturer do in the instance that they are developing a new product, but they release the product before the recommended shelf life?
So is this before the recommended shelf life or actually before the product was approved to release at the market? Because there's 2 different things. So I think you're referring to you are developing the product and that you are into that stage where you already are producing, but you're not ready to release it to the complete market because you're either trying to get the results back that it's okay to send it to market research where you do your organoleptic. And then all of a sudden the product just left the facility. That could represent a recall process for you, because you're not sure if the product now that it's going into the market pose a threat for the consumer to get harmed because you don't have the results yet. No. So what I would recommend is that if you run into that situation, you actually do an investigation of what happened, because you should have, your whole protocols and your release protocols being followed, and, put corrective actions. And one of them will be probably a recall or a market withdrawal. If you are not sure about the threat, then it will be a recall.
Yeah. You can understand, though, that I suppose each department or has got their own like marketing, or sales, they want to get the product out as quickly as possible. They want to get it. It's a great idea. They want to get selling, but there are no shortcuts really, are they? In terms of, let's say, if a product is, claimed to have 6 months shelf life, really, you've got to prove that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a long process.
It can be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's it. Right. SG, can you see that one? Is it necessary to have or involve third-party testing on your products if the company R&D has their own protocol to perform tests on the products?
So it all depends. I mean, if you have an R&D that does the testing in terms of quality and general microbiology, you need to get a third party actually to test your products. But when it comes to validations, let's say that in my case, I was validating a new thermal process. I need to involve a third party that has a known reputation of doing this kind of studies if I am not set up for that. Because, again, this is going to be, in my case, was my sustain to now develop a hazard-based process with critical limits that I was going to monitor. And so I needed to actually perform a scientific-based study. And if you're set up for that and you can collect your data, you can do that perfectly fine. In my case, I was not. So I had to send it to a third party.
Right. Okay. Just maybe one or two more. Susie, at what step do I need to do micro testing for my product if this is a short shelf life product, 5 to 8 days?
So if you have a product with a short shelf life, I would recommend that you do one at day 0 and then one in the middle of your shelf life and then towards the end of the shelf life. It's just going to give you an idea on how your product is behaving throughout that portion. Now, it all depends too, because it's micro really give you the information that you need. A lot of us tends to go towards micro for shelf life. But if you have a product that is not commercially sterile, that that has, like, let's say, lactic acid bacteria in there, and that's the ones that is influencing your shelf life, yeah, sure, you can see if they're growing, fast throughout those 8 days. But then you also have to combine it with, organoleptic. Because, you may find that at day 4, you have a small quantity of bacteria, but then when you actually taste the product, it's already rancid. So it's not just cut and dry when it comes to microbes and shelf life and all that stuff. Okay,
thank you, Radhika. Last question. Rohale, as a food safety aspect, when would you modify / update your hazard plan document? At the time of R&D hazard analysis or initial production, or at the time of product launch, or at the time of production? So when's the best time to sort of formally update your hazard plan document?
So I would say, obviously, you have to have the initial conversations before even the ingredients touch the plant, right? And start doing that hazard analysis. And once you are sure that the product is going to be successful, then, as the product is being in the prototype stage and, you're getting the results of, yeah, this is a goal, then you need to have an meeting with your entire food safety plan and go over the hazard analysis already made to be sure that there is not additional concerns, and then start updating your plans before it hits the full market.
Yes, sure, for sure. Yeah. Okay. Go on then. One more, Dennis. Seeing as you're a regular. Dennis has just been dinged a minor for not having an R&D program, even though they outsource R&D. How do we get past this?
Well, I will have to look at the actual finding. What I'm guessing is that you outsource R&D and you probably thought it was out of your scope, during your certification, but you still have to have a process written. even though if it's at source. Okay. So my guess, again, I'm not looking at the finding itself. I'm not looking at the description, is that they're looking for you to have a process that outlines, okay, well, if you have your bench top done by a third party, so once the bench top is done and you guys decide to go with the product, what is the process that you follow? You know, when it comes here. So.
Right. Super. Right, Radoika, fantastic. We've just about finished on time, and I think we've answered all the questions. So splendid presentation and
awesome.
great Q&A as well. So perfect. First time with us. I hope it won't be the last. Radoika Baritsky, technical training manager, SES Global Services. Thanks, and have a great weekend.
Oh, you too. Thank you, everybody.
Cheers. Bye now.
Bye.
Right, ladies and gents, that was Radoika Baritsky. I've got that down to a T now, so I hope Radoika will be back again. I've loaded your certificate in the sidebar, so you can download that. All you have to do is click on the download now. It'll take you to Dropbox. It's a PNG image. You can either print and sign it or open it an image package and type your name. And then you've got a certificate to show those auditors that you're keeping up to date. And then hopefully you can watch this. When we send the recording and the slides, rewatch it and start to formulate just a step-by-step process. And then talk to your team. Have you got all the bases covered? And is there anything you can improve? Team approach. If everybody understands why they're doing something, and then you start to work out how to bring that about, there's more chance of it getting buy-in throughout the whole process and for the new product to be successful. So go for it. Have a great weekend, everyone. Happy Friday, and we'll see you next week. Well, actually, internal auditor training next week. We'll see you the week after. All right. Take care. Thank you. Bye.